Thank you. So good morning, everybody. So first of all, thanks for the organization for allowing me to be here to present my work. Just first a few words about me. I'm Italian mathematical engineer, and I got a PhD in telecommunication engineer, just obtained actually. And now I'm a postdoc in Politecnico Torino, Italy. And as you see, I've got somehow a different background because I work for different companies, also outside of telecommunication engineering and also different universities. And my research interests are quite varied because I'm interested in data science in general, like big data analytics and data mining and machine learning. But also my main focus was about studying human behavior analysis and modeling of human behavior in the web. And in particular, the application was for recommendation systems, social networks behavior, web browsing habits, and smart city design. And also, my other research areas are about optimization and meta-heuristics. So let me go back. Today's presentation will be about user fingerprinting techniques from TCP traffic, and I developed this research together with the University of Minas Gerais in Brazil. And the idea is, as you may know, our interests on the web are not private, not at all. You can read the newspaper and you know that everything that we do when we are online, like the website we see, etc., are basically easily accessible from third parties. And in general, we know that there are a huge number of trackers that record the user web activities with different techniques. But now in this presentation, I want to focus just the anonymity from a network point of view. And so in general, from a network point of view, does our traffic characterize us, uniquely identify us? And well, user can try to defend themselves, and so they can change application, they can change device, and they can change also networks. And as we know, HTTPS limits the access to third parties, especially from, for example, ISP or people that can be inside the network and try to understand what happens. HTTPS limits a lot what we can see. But still, my question was, can we still use that visible information for fingerprinting the users? And when I say fingerprinting the user, it's important to separate the problem into two, because when I say fingerprinting, it's about user or device. Because what characterizes the behavior of the user when online is basically the web services that the user accesses. So it doesn't change if you are on your mobile, on your PC, probably will access the same kind of websites, the same sets of websites. Instead, when we try to fingerprint in the device, the problem is much more easy. Why? Because what characterizes the behavior on the user device is not just the web services the user accesses, so the same as you see before, but also the services that support this web service, like, for example, CDN, and also the installed application on the device. For example, if you have an Android, probably will access Google updates, or if you have a Mac, you will access probably Apple software updates. So these are two different problems. First, one is if you want to fingerprint the user, and the other if you want to fingerprint the user on his device. So the contribution of my research was about the study the capabilities of tracking using only the visited domains. And in particular, when I say visited domains, I mean the server full qualified domain name. And these domains are obtained from passive traces and from TCP logs, and we will see later. And what was novel in my research was about that I was also only considering the name of the contacted server. I was comparing different metrics for tracking, and also we're proposing a methodology to identify the domains intentionally requested by the user, and not the one that were requested by the device. And as you probably all know, just let me talk about a bit of passive network measurements. Passive network measurements are the processes of measuring the traffic exchange between devices that are interconnected by a network. And basically, so the traffic is generated by others and is observed either on the client or on the server on the network. And from the network, for example, I was using TSTAT, that I will explain later. TSTAT is a tool developed by my university. Basically, it captures the traffic and processes it in real time. When there are users connected to the internet at a probe, at a point of presence, we're able to monitor the traffic. And we log more than 100 statistics per each TCP flow. We also log information from each HTTP request and response. And then we also are able to connect each single flow with the server domain requested. And this is obtained either by the packet inspection of the HTTP and TLS packets, or by tracking DNS conversation and retrieving the original server domain name. And this was done by the tool DNHunter. However, if you want to learn more about the TSTAT, you can go to the website tstat.polito.it, where you can also download it and obtain all the information. For this research, I used two datasets. One was from my university campus, and one was an ISP I'm collaborating with. And as you may see from the size, it was quite a big size because it was a monitor about thousands of users for about 1 month. So we had to analyze first from TSTAT to analyze flows for hundreds of terabytes, and then even just the log size of the TCP flow was about hundreds of gigabytes. So in order to process this, I needed to use the Apache Spark in another loop cluster, and with some techniques, we were able to reading and processing all the dataset in about 20 minutes. When we talk about data of the users, we also need to speak about ethics and privacy, especially now with the new GDPR. So for doing that, for the university, we obtain like some review of data collection, and we need to anonymize the IP addresses, and we need also to save just the data that was strictly needed from my research. From the ISP dataset, the requirements were even stricter, so we weren't able to also save the name of the domain. And then what's the main base for my research? Well, the hypothesis is that the users are repetitive over time. Users go back to visit the same website, the same domains in different times. And then we want to identify the users among profiles that were built in the past, just by checking the visited domains. So there are 2 steps in the research. First, we need to profile the users. We have to create the fingerprints. And then we have to identify the user in a letter trace. As a performance matrix, I just use the percentage of users correctly identified in the future. And I will briefly present the 3 metrics that I used for comparing the different profiles. And they were all more or less simple. I will just briefly present. The first is the Jaccard index. So if you have 2 sets of domains visited, and we want to see how much they are similar, the 2 profiles, we can just take the 2 sets, A and B. We can take the intersection and the size of it, and divide it by the union of the 2 sets. And then we have somehow a performance of similarity between the 2 lists. This is super fast because it doesn't need the whole set for all the users, and it just depends on these 2 domain sets. But as you will see, it's too simple. Then we can try instead to create a model of the user behavior, and then trying to maximizing the likelihood for a user in the future to be associated with one on the past. So in this behavioral model, I built the user's likelihood of visiting a domain is either governed by the popularity of the domain. So for example, Google, everybody goes to Google. And second is whether the domain was already appeared in your previous domain sets. And these 2 different characteristics are not fixed, the proportion between the 2. So we can have personalized factor of attraction towards the best domains. And then, given the user in the past, we take the user in the future and we compare with all the previous users that we create fingerprinting, and we try to take the one that is most likely the same. And a third similarity I always used was cosine similarity with TF-IDF. And as we know, the TF-IDF reflects how important a domain is for a user, and also with respect to all the users. So to do that, we also need all the profiles for all the users. And for computational complexity, I will not go into details, but as I said, cosine similarity and maximum likelihood needs the whole sets. And so it's a bit more complex, but still we are able to do for thousands and thousands of users in basically a few minutes. And the second important part of the research was about being able to separate the domains into what I call core and support. Core domain for me are the domains that are intentionally requested by a user to download the page HTML documents. So for example, if you go to facebook.com and you contact facebook.com, this first contact is what I call core domain, while all the other things that are into the page that are downloaded from, for example, from CDN, for videos, for images, well, for me, these are support domains. So these are the remaining domains that are triggered by website visits or also by background applications. And core domains, for me, are more important for fingerprinting because they are independent from the device, and they are more interpretable because they are basically what the user wants to see. And to do that, I just designed a really simple classification task based on a machine learning methodology that is decision tree classifier. So I built a label dataset from training and testing using different devices, smartphone and PCs. I get some features by active crawling the visiting home page of each domain. And then, thanks to these decision trees, I was able to obtain an accuracy of 96%. And even if this needs some active measurements, it was done in about 1 hour for about 500,000 of domains. And let's go to some results about the fingerprinting of the user. First of all, we can say that the user browsing is repetitive. So the hypothesis we were making is basically satisfied. So if we put, for example, here the cumulative over the different users of the measure of similarity based on TF-IDS, we can see that in the red curve, these are the similarity between same users, and red and green curve is the similarity between different users. And we see that curves are completely separated. So we can see that users are did indeed behave similar over time. And they are and these metrics, for example, the TF-IDF is discriminative for separating the profiles. Then we can say we can study how many domains we need for the profiling and identification task. So we can see basically two set of points. The one below are the one that are on using the support domains, while the one with circle marker are the one that are using core domains. So as we see, we need many domains that are core to identify the user on his device. And that means that core domain better characterize the user. And on the x-axis, we have the number of domains. So the bigger the set, of course, the better the identification. The more traffic you generate, the more it's easy for a third party to characterize you. And then there are the three methods that are not too different, but we can clearly see that Jaccard is the worst, while TF-IDF and maximum likelihood are more or less the same. Then we can also study, because the previous this graph was done by taking fixed the number of collected domains, but how many domains are you visiting, for example, in 1 day or in 1 week? So we repeat the experiment by just considering 2 consecutive days and 2 consecutive weeks. And we can see again that in general, we visited much more support domains than core ones. Is 1 order of magnitude bigger, like 700 with respect to 70. And so the quantity of support domains helps in identification, because there are personalized ads, because there is all the particular domain for the device. And the metrics goes up to more than 80%. So even for users, this is 80% because many users don't visit 700 domains. They visit just a few domains. So for them, it's much harder to recognize. And in general, we see that the TF-IDF and maximum likelihood estimation works much better than Jaccard index. And then we repeat them for the ISP case. For that, we weren't able to separate into core and support domain because we didn't have the ground truth about the name of the domain. But still, we can see that for ISP case, the usage was much more intense than for the university case. And so also the percentage of user correctly identified was much higher. So we reached about 95% of correctly identified users. And the last research was about what if we can have longer profiling or longer identification? Is it better to profile for much more time, or it is better to identify for much more time? And we can see that clearly it's better to profiling the users for much more time, because it's the graph on the left. We can see that if we have 2 weeks for profiling a group of users, then with just 6 hours for the identification time, we can reach more or less 75% of correctly identified user. While again, the Jaccard index performs bad because of course it's symmetric, so it doesn't consider the whole set of users. Instead, on the opposite, if we just have 6 hours for profiling the whole set of users, we reach much worse performance of about 50 to 75%. But still, I think that this is good results, because profiling a set of users for just 6 hours, we have like 50% of possibility to still recognize the user. So in conclusion, with my research, I can say that there is no privacy in anonymity online, even just using the domains from a network point of view. We've seen that if we use good similarity metrics and some machine learning application, we also are able to improve forensic application. We've seen how the web services intentionally requested what I was called core domains, better characterize the users, and so we are able also to tracking the user when using different devices. But in general, also the support domains are important, because they are really a lot. And as a future work, I left to analyze the point of view not for a viewer of the network, but from a tracker application, because we can know which tracker are in which domains, so we're able to analyze the point of view of trackers. And all these datasets, anonymized, are also available, and the website there is on there. I can share the slides then. And so you can also repeat some kind of experiments and try to find better similarity measures. And this work was published last year, and this is the venue, and if you have questions, please go ahead.
Jeff. Thank you for the presentation, fascinating. 2 questions with regards to data gathering. You assume that you'll get unencrypted SNI. You assume you should be able to look into DNS. So DNS over TLS reality, DNS over quick will come faster than you can imagine. SNI encryption is happening as we speak. So what's left?
Well, I didn't design the tool DNHunter, but still is able to track in the conversation, and you don't have the clear address, but still from the address you can somehow tracking down the name of the domain. I'm not.
You look at the SNI encryption, you'll only see front end. The server, the origin is not going to be visible anymore. It's encrypted. You lose it completely.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Look at the SNI encryption draft, what's going to be implemented pretty much everywhere. It introduced notion of front-end server that is only server that knows how to decrypt the backend, the real server, and see what's inside. From monitoring perspective, there is nothing visible, nothing at all.
Okay, I'm not able to answer the question because I was not the one in charge of doing that, but still we did this a few months ago, so.
I would question how it's going to look here from
since I didn't know, I don't want to answer wrong things, so I just advise you to check DNHunter on the web, dn/hunter, and check how it works.
Так, ну Джефф нам вернул обратно надежду на анонимность в интернете.
So again, yes, we have hopes for anonymity in the web. Are there any other questions? So very nice to see that there are no questions and the audience is still awake. So the presentation probably has been well received. And still, briefly, we have one more question. If I may ask in Russian, have you ever tried, instead of SNI, to research?
Use IP addresses instead of SNI. Is it possible to identify users by just using
Of course. Yeah, of
IP
course.
fix or so
but
data?
What if you change and you move into another house, for example, and you change
Yes.
IP? So
Yes, if you have,
that was the point. I mean, also, of course, if you stay in the same network, you have a fixed IP address. That's really easy.
Yes, I mean, if you use just IP addresses of servers instead of SNIs of servers, is it possible to identify users?
This is what I used was a finer granularity, so it was definitely easier. I didn't do the experiment just by using the IP addresses of the servers, but I'm suspecting I'm having worse results, but I can't say how much I can reach.
Okay, thank you.
Так, коллеги, спасибо большое.
Thank you. Thank you very much.